Hi, and thanks for joining us. My name is David Penn. I'm an analyst with the Finovate Group. Joining me today is Theo Lau. She's a speaker, writer, and founder of Unconventional Ventures. We're going to be talking a little about some of the presentations that she's been a part of, both some of the keynote addresses that she's provided, as well as some of the panels that she has moderated. Theo, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
And one of the things I find that's fascinating about you, one thing that's nice to get a chance to talk to you, is that you cover a couple of different topics within FinTech. You talk about gender diversity, you've talked about the issues of seniors in dealing with technology, and with technology itself. So I thought maybe to start off with, let's start off with this. First, why don't you tell us a little bit about Unconventional Ventures, because I'm suspecting that not a lot of people know what it's all about.
Yes, I think one of the misunderstanding is that we write checks and we actually don't. We do connect a lot of startup founders with funders.
Okay.
The main goal of what we're trying to do is to expand the ecosystem and to help expose founders that don't typically have the opportunity to get into the ecosystem. So be it because they're in a different zip code, be it because they're a different gender, different ethnicity. So we help them with, the business models, the strategy, partnership, and whatnot.
Oh, excellent, excellent. So let's get into some of the things that you've been doing here at the conference. I know that you were part of you gave a keynote yesterday on AI and the future of financial services. Maybe you could talk a little bit about that and maybe some of the key ideas you wanted to share with your audience.
Yeah, sure. So it's always one of my most favorite topics to talk about, because a lot of times when people think about AI, they think about killer robots. And that's what I do not talk about.
No killer robots.
I like to go back to more basic applications, right? Things that are actually useful, things that are happening, and how can we reimagine the future with the technology that we have. So one of the most interesting applications, if you will, is to use AI to be able to help us better predict our financial future. Because we are living longer, like you say, longevity is one of my focus. And so with extra 30 years of living, we need to rethink how we manage our money, our relationship with money. So how can we make our nest last longer? How can we make better and smarter decisions?
Right. Yeah. It's just really interesting. I know one of the things that people talk about with finance is, one of the challenges that human beings have with finance is that so many things that are important to do financially are not counterintuitive, are not the things that we would think to do. And the idea of being able to apply technology to that to sort of help us out of our worst instincts in some respects seems extremely important.
Yes, absolutely. And especially, things around intergenerational, right? Because right now it's pretty typical to have 3 or even 4 generations of households living, close to each other.
Sure.
And so the question becomes, at what point do people such as ourselves in sandwich generation start stepping in to help with our parents or grandparents, at the same time planning for our own financial future and that of our children, tuition and whatnot, right? So things around decumulation is something that we need to think about, but as human nature goes, we don't.
Right.
Because it's, another 10, 15, 20 years out, we can't think that far away.
Sure. And just the aversion of thinking that sort of thing. I remember at Finovate Asia in Singapore, one of the presentations, a woman got up and I think that was called Bereave. And she got up and said that what we're here is to help you prepare for your death. And you could almost feel the wave through the room of my what?
Yes.
But, well, of course. I mean, what else are you going to do? You've got to be able to prepare for these things. And again, to the degree that technology can maybe make that a little bit easier, maybe make it a little seem objective in a sense.
Yes, or magic 8 ball, right? That's what we always talk about. How can we predict the future? Well, perhaps with the help of a machine, with unlimited data, access to data, if you will, it can help us take the emotions out of decision making.
Now, that was something else I wanted to touch on. You were on a power panel that was discussing AI and data also.
Yes.
And you have always, one of the things, again, I remember, I think it was in Singapore, where you were talking about the importance of what data gets included, who includes that data. What were some of the takeaways from that discussion that you were involved in?
Yeah, so it's actually very similar, but slightly different twist. I think in the West, we have a slightly different perception of privacy and convenience, right? So in the Far East, like what you talk about, a lot of times challenger banks, super apps, and what have you, the way that consumers in China and Southeast Asia use a lot of these applications. They use it not just only for payments, they use it for social media, they use it for saving, investing, and everything else. And then the question is, where do you draw the line between having a convenient access to everything one app does it all, through how much information do you want to share with them? And I think, in the West, we have a little bit of, shall we say, concerns about privacy, facial recognition and whatnot.
Big time, yeah.
And so if you were to do a parallel, then it will almost become, can I combine an app with Google, Facebook, Amazon, and all of that together is there one such company that I will be comfortable sharing all my data with?
Yeah.
So a lot of the discussions yesterday that we talked about data and bias and privacy has to do with culture, right? How do we perceive and how do we reconcile the different cultures? And and a lot of things are contextual. But I think one thing we do come away with is that AI is not evil, right? It's not, despite all the negative publicity, I think there's a lot of good that can be gotten from the technology. So as banks, as FinTech startups, one of the challenges, how do we get consumers comfortable adapting to technology? How do we portray more of the positive sides of tech?
Yeah, it's interesting. You talk about the idea of helping individuals become more comfortable with technology, things like AI. One of the things you've also talked about is how legacy businesses can be made to feel more comfortable dealing with technology and AI. I can imagine that both of those are challenging. What's some of your thoughts with regard to legacy businesses and dealing with some of these really new, powerful emerging technologies?
People.
Yeah.
Yes, which in a way it almost sounds counterintuitive because a lot of times when we talk about technology, it's ones and zeros. But behind every one and zero, there are people. Right? In order to make technology work, you need people that are willing to change, that are open to change, and that can adapt your processes and everything else, your org structure, for example.
Right.
So I think the challenge is when it comes to legacy or incumbents adopting technology or partnering with startups, isn't so much so the tech itself, it's the people.
Yeah. That has really been a theme. I've had a number of conversations so far at the conference with a lot of folks very deeply involved in the technology and the real under the hood type of stuff. But in every instance, it's always come back to the human beings involved. That the technology is one thing, but if you cannot get the folks who are either having to manage the technology or supposed to be on the receiving end of the person of the technology, if you can't get their full commitment to participate, there's going to be a problem somewhere along the line. And it's interesting to hear that coming up again with with things that you're seeing.
Yep, absolutely. And especially with things that deals with AI, that deals with data, right? There's a lot of skepticism, if you will, when it comes to how do we ensure transparency? How do we ensure explainability? How do we explain the algorithms that is in that box, right? Not just to only make ourselves feel like, okay, we're doing the right thing, but also make our consumers feel like we're doing the right thing.
Yeah, very good, very good. One last thing I wanted to touch on is that we've got a special thing that we've added to Finovate Europe, actually to Finovate for the first time, and that's our Women in FinTech stream. We've had various presentations, things like that, but to devote an entire stream to that is a new thing for Finovate, and I know that you're going to be participating in that to some degree. Can you kind of give us a preview of some of the things you're going to be talking about with your audience in that stream?
Yes. So there's always talking about diversity in technology, diversity in FinTech. I don't think is somewhat of a mystery that we need more women. But I think the root cause of why don't we have more women, it's like peeling an onion. There are many layers. One of the focus, and it is something that I've learned once I start digging into it, is actually much more complex than just bringing women in, right? So a lot of times we need to think about the culture. Is the culture conducive to having women or supporting women with families or parents, right? Because you can bring all the women in that you want, but if you require them to be at the office all the time, or you have a lot of functions that are off the hours, there is a limit as to how much parents can participate. And so when you start thinning out people in the lower ranks, then you'll have less of a pipeline, if you will. So I think we need to go back to the root cause of looking at, is there enough focus being given to support parents from a policy perspective, even government, right? Paid leave. The United States is the only developed country in the entire world that doesn't have paid parental leave, right? So we need to look at that, as well as caregiving. And it's interesting, a lot of that ties back to the fact that we're living longer. So when we're living longer, we have parents that a lot of times we need to take care of, and women overwhelmingly are their caretakers. And I'll share with you one fact, which is dumbfounding. On average, women in the United States take about 12 years of a career break on caregiving.
Wow.
So think about what we could do with 12 years time.
Wow.
And then you wonder, why don't we have more women executives?
That's a really good point. I mean, there's so much of a thought that, well, all you need to do is sort of connect A and B and you're going to be there. And when you really start to look at it, in some respects, it maybe makes the problem seem a little bit more intractable because there's so many parts. but at the same time, I suspect it also makes it seem more urgent, that if you
is.
do have this many issues, that the solution isn't to turn away from them, but to really say, we really need to tackle this, because here's a major impediment to a more flourishing of what we could be seeing in terms of our culture, in terms of our businesses, in terms of our people. So it's really fascinating.
Absolutely, and it takes a village, and it's really, really true. I take it from a personal experience. After I have my 2 kids, I realized how immensely difficult it is. Doesn't matter if you're a woman or a man, it is really, really hard, right?
Yeah.
And so you need to have the support system. Like the reason why I'm able to sit here and talk with you is because I have that support system.
Right.
Not everyone has that.
Yeah, truly. And just by wrapping up, sort of sticking with that same topic, you talked about support systems. I would also imagine in terms of leadership and the idea of helping cultivate more women leaders in FinTech, and technology in general, but specifically in FinTech. I'm curious in terms of some of your thoughts along that as well, in terms of the importance of that, or some of the things that can be done to kind of help encourage that, which I would imagine would make it easier to bring on some of these things when you've got that thought at the top that, hey, this is the direction we're going to go in.
I think it's something that takes all genders,
Yeah.
right? I reject the idea that it needs to be more women leaning in, because it isn't just about leaning in. It's not about the fact that we're not doing enough. It's the fact that there is not anything else behind us when we try to lean back. So it's we need to help each other out. So I actually love what Finovate has been doing, what the team has been doing. Greg and I has been talking a lot about how do we get more women involved, and don't reach into the same black book. That's what I told them, right? Whenever you find someone new, ask them for like 2 or 3 more recommendations. That's how you expand the network, and that's how you can help lift each other up.
Excellent. Very good. Well, thank you very much for sitting down and talking with us about a couple of very, very interesting issues.
Thanks for having me.
All right, and thank you for joining us as well.